Hi, the SI meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Tuesday, October 23rd. Well, still a very interesting weather pattern unfolding for the weekend and the early part of next week, with lots of differences between a lot of the computer forecast models. In fact, there's kind of an international battle going on between the models. Some of the models, mostly the foreign models like the European model, Japanese model, Canadian models, have quite a tropical storm slamming into the mid-Atlantic or northeast coast early next week, whereas the main U.S. model, the GFS forecast model, still has the tropical storm system, Sandy, moving harmlessly out to sea over the weekend. So probably will take at least another 72 hours to really resolve this and have high confidence in the forecast, because one of the main players is a deep upper level trough in the middle part of the atmosphere with a lot of cold air associated with it. And that plays a huge role in this whole setup for the early part of next week. And that is still sitting right off the west coast of the U.S. So it's still way out there. In fact, a good part of that trough is still out over the waters. So the models may not have a great handle on that particular main player here until later this week. Here's the very latest look at the tropical cyclone activity in the Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean Sea, and Atlantic. And here is the storm of interest. Yesterday it was just kind of a swirling bands of showers and thunderstorms, and now it's a tropical storm. Winds are relatively weak at 45 miles per hour, but that's enough to make it a tropical storm, a named tropical storm. And it looks like over the next few days it'll move rather slowly and gradually to the north. Here's the island of Jamaica, and then it looks like it'll cross over Cuba and towards the Bahamas. And right about here is where the models start to really diverge. The GFS model at this point continues to move the storm to the north and east, where some of the other models, like the European model, actually has it going to the north and east, but then kind of pulling back in towards certainly the northeast coast or maybe even the mid-Atlantic coast. It kind of phases with that deep upper level trough moving in and pulls the system back in towards the northeast U.S. coast. And again, it looks like it'll take at least a few days to kind of resolve this. The European model, I will say, has had a pretty good record in the medium range, 6 to 10 days out. So it certainly sets off a red flag. We cannot dismiss it just because the GFS model has a storm going harmlessly out to sea. Here's the very latest close-up of Tropical Storm Sandy. This is from the GOES satellite. It's a colorized infrared satellite loop, and first of all, a couple things are noticed here. First of all, lots of convection right around the center part of this particular storm. In other words, it's intensifying as we speak here. Lots of development of thunderstorms right here, indicative of a strengthening process, and indeed this could become a hurricane over the next day or two. The island of Jamaica is hard to see on this particular image loop, but it's right here. For the moment, it looks like this storm is rather stationary. Ultimately, it'll start to take a turn to the north and head towards Jamaica and then Cuba. Now, here's a map from the CIMS Wisconsin website that shows the steering currents in mid and upper level parts of the atmosphere, and suggests that this storm will in fact move north and then be kind of pushed to the northeast, at least for the next few days. It's after that that the real question comes into play. But right now, there's a kind of high pressure in this part of the atmosphere with kind of wind flow here blowing, circulating clockwise around this high pressure ridge along the east coast. So you can envision that this will not allow the storm to head towards Florida, for example. Over the next couple of days, it'll move across Jamaica and then Cuba, and then it'll be kind of forced to the north and east for a while as these steering winds kind of push it away. However, again, it's beyond that point that the real question comes into play as to, can it be pulled towards the mid-Atlantic or northeast coast. This is another interesting map from the Wisconsin website, and again, this argues for movement towards the north and then to the northeast. First of all, what we're looking at is an image loop of precipitable water. In other words, basically it's showing where the dry air is and where the moist air is. And you hear a lot of moist air over the Caribbean, and you see the swirling clouds here where Tropical Storm Sandy exists. Certainly no reason to believe that it'll weaken at this point. In fact, there's lots of moisture here, over the Caribbean, the sea surface temperature is still quite warm. But notice here along the East Coast, with that high pressure system, lots of dry air moving in from the west to the east, right along the East Coast. So again, all of this argues for it be very difficult at this point to see this storm moving like this and then towards Florida. At least over the next few days, it looks like the push will be to the north and then to the northeast, based on this dry air infiltration here and the steering currents pushing away. So that's what the GFS is seeing, that is pushing it more and more to the northeast over the next few days. Again, beyond this time period is when the European model then kind of pulls it back in towards the mid-Atlantic and northeast coast, all at the same time that deep upper level trough reaches the East Coast. Well, here's another map kind of showing the battle going on between some of these computer forecast models. And again, here's Sandy exists somewhere right down in here. Looks like it'll go over Cuba, and pretty much all models agree it'll go over Cuba and then start turning to the north and east. And again, it looks like that is a reasonable solution based on that dry air and the upper level winds right now for the next few days in that part of the country. But then after that, notice a few models start to pull it in towards the north and west, and beyond this time frame here, there are actually some models that pull it right towards anywhere from the northeast coast to even the mid-Atlantic coast, whereas other models continue it harmlessly out to sea. So it'll be interesting to watch this unfold over the next few days. Well, one last map to show, and again, staying focused on the potential for the early part of next week. It's a very interesting scenario. That's why we're kind of focused on it. It's not often you have the possibility of a hurricane along the East Coast. At the same time, cold air moves into the Appalachian region, and they could even have some snowfall associated with a hurricane. So that's why it's a very interesting situation we're focused in on. This is actually the current 500 millibar map, and this is the final map I want to show here. Again, this deep upper level trough sitting right here off the west coast right now is the main player, and it's still way out there. That's why the models may not have the exact solution right now. Obviously, some of the models are incorrect, because some of them have this storm ultimately moving harmlessly out to sea, and others have it pulling back towards the mid-Atlantic or northeast coast early next week. So until this moves overland and we have a little better data coverage, we won't have high confidence in this forecast. So that, again, moves gradually to the east over the next few days and plays a major role once it reaches the East Coast. At the same time, this storm is sitting right off the mid-Atlantic coast. So we'll monitor the situation over the next several days. Very interesting scenario. That's it for now. For the SIweather.com, I'm the SI meteorologist, Paul Dorian.